Welcome back, guys. The auto loan bubble is going to pop sooner or later. So in the last year, we've seen used car prices soar higher than ever. This car I'm sitting on right now actually for a while was worth more than what I paid for it, right? So I paid like $55,000 for it. I drove it 1,000 miles, and I was seeing cars the exact same year and model for more than I paid for it. So that is problematic. Obviously, used cars should not be more expensive than new cars, which is the case. My girlfriend was trying to buy a Mini Cooper. 10-year-old Mini Coopers are going for 35 grand. Astronomical. So why is this happening? Well, inflation, or not inflation rates. Why is this happening? Well, interest rates were super duper low, and obviously when interest rates are low, the price of everything goes up, including these things. Obviously, one of the most standard loans we all get outside of a house is a car loan. So I'm gonna break all that down for you. Of course, we're not gonna stay here to do it, because as you can see, we're on a busy street, so let's take it back home. My name is Forrest. I invest in stuff and you should too. Today we're going to talk about the auto loan bubble and really what that means in the context of things. I actually watched a few other videos on this. This is a topic that's been floating around. This is actually something that I've been talking about since I think 2 or 3 years ago actually, right? Auto loans have continued to get longer and longer in terms of the loan duration, right? So you can go out and you can get a 72-month loan and essentially be paying that loan for the rest of your life. It's not something I recommend, but let's actually talk about the economic situation, and I'll keep it super simple. I actually had a ton of articles pulled up. We're just going to use this one article. It's actually on lendingtree.com talking about auto loan debt statistics. So if you're excited to hear about this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I appreciate each and every one of you. So let's go ahead and dig in. And let's go ahead and just look at the third highlighted bullet here. It says that auto loan debt is the third largest debt category behind mortgages and student loans, right? Overall, Americans owe $1.46 trillion in auto loan debt, accounting for 9.4% of American consumer debt, right? So that means that cars, which are a depreciating asset, people are spending quite a chunk of change on that. And that's pretty important. So, my recommendation for people, obviously we need cars in America, everything's super spread out, is always get something though that is already depreciated quite a bit, right? So you should always buy a used car, 2 or 3 years old. It's already taken, most of the depreciation. Other people have already done the first, 10, 20,000 miles. You get the car, still has a lot of life left, but the debt that you take out, you're very unlikely to end up underwater on that debt. The next bullet, on average, Americans take out more than $60 billion in new auto loans each month. $60 billion in debt is written each month for depreciating assets. That means that people are borrowing money to pay on something that is instantly worth less the amount of money that they borrowed. Pretty crazy. By age, Americans younger than 50 take out $37.9 billion in auto debt monthly, compared with $21 billion by those 50 and older. So younger people, young and dumb, are borrowing a crap ton of money to take out debt. So not too much to really conclude from that so far, but let's continue to dig in. So the next bullet, combined with the fact that we had crazy used car market appreciation recently due to supply shortages and things like that, is really what has compounded this problem, right? So the average auto loan term is 69.7 months. That's over 5 years, right? 60 months, by the way, for anyone who's bad at math, is 5 years. So this is another 9 months on top of that. So over 5 years to pay off a car. So if you think about what that means, especially in a market where you take out debt on a depreciating asset, you're taking over 5 years to pay off that loan. You probably have maintenance costs during that, or you definitely do have maintenance costs. You have to get new tires. If you drive a lot, if you're a commuter, right, you probably have at least one major repair in that 5-year period, right? Putting a couple $1,000s into something that is depreciating, and so when you've paid it off, right? You have an asset that is worth less than what you borrowed on it, right? And you took 5 years to pay that off, which means that's 5 years of money that you haven't put into something else, unless you bought it at a good price in the first place. And this is an important point that I make in all videos talking about anything finance related. The average holding costs, or right, your cost to get into something, right, on a monthly basis should not be the determining factor for getting that thing, right? Example, perfect example, you go to a dealership and they'll ask you, how much do you want to pay every month, right? If you approach buying a vehicle from how much you want to pay every month, you can buy a Lamborghini, right? All you have to do is extend the loan out far enough, right, to where you'll be paying it for your whole life, and then your kids all the way down to your grandkids will be paying off that debt. That's how long they can make the loan term. That is what's happening, is people are taking out bigger and bigger loans to get into cars just so that their payment will stay at $350 a month instead of buying things at the right price. Same thing in housing. That's why housing prices have skyrocketed. Well, it's part of the reason why housing prices have skyrocketed, and I promise we'll get back to cars. But when money gets super cheap, right, it allows the price of things to go up. And so now, because interest rates were down at 3%, right, this is another lever of buying debt, is the actual interest rate, but that got super low. And so basically you had people getting into houses that they otherwise would not get into. And what happens is that when things go the other way, now you'll be underwater on something, not be able to sell it pretty easily, right? And so the best thing is to always buy something at the right price. So first, price value, and then figure out, you know, the best way to get debt for that thing. Do not make your purchasing decision based off of, oh, well, I can spend $300 a month. Let's see what the best thing is I can get at $300 a month. No, you should say, okay, I have a budget of 12 grand. Let's see what I can get for 12 grand, right? Makes sense? Moving on. All right, so this table really shows, so this table right here really shows what is wrong with your average consumer. It's labeled average monthly payments by credit score range, and it's broken down, you know, payments, credit scores. If you look at the top, so in the credit score range is 781 to 850, right? The average monthly payment is $613. If you go down, the numbers go up, right? So the second highest credit score, the average payment is $651. In the middle of the range, 601 to 660, it's $677. Going down to the bottom of the table, we can see that in the range of 300 to 500, right? So people with terrible credit actually have an average price of $626 monthly payment for a new vehicle, which is completely ass backwards. And this is average, guys. This is average. This is actually alarming, right? I pay, by the way, right? So I have an M2, which I bought with 7,000 miles. That's 7,000 miles. It's like barely used, barely touched. My payment is around $600, right? And the difference between me and the people in the $300 to $500 credit range is, one, that feels like too much to me. Like, I don't even like paying the $600 a month for that. And I'm basically just waiting until I have, you know, a chunk of change that I'm willing to not invest into the market to pay that car off. And I'm actually gonna probably pay it off in like 3 weeks from whenever this video posted, or maybe when this video is posted, the car will probably be paid off, right? But the point is, in my income bracket, and I do pretty good, I'm not comfortable paying $600 a month. I don't like it, right? About it, well, not even a year to that, I basically paid my car half off, and then I've just been sitting on paying off the other half. But neither here nor there. It's expensive, right? And I guess for a point of reference, I'm making multiples of 6 figures, right? Cash flow is king. You want to protect your cash flow. This is really, really bad, right? If your credit score is 300 to 500, you know, that's really, really bad, guys. Your car payment, if you're, you know, right out of college, if you're younger, if you're trying to get your life together, should be in like the $200 to $300 range, right? Tops. Again, you're buying a depreciating asset, and it depreciates for 2 reasons. One, it just depreciates off the lot if it's new, right? As soon as you buy a car, you drive it off the lot, it depreciates. Then it depreciates through use, unless you have a car that is, something interesting that car people like. It's gonna depreciate, right? Through use. You add miles, the value goes down, right? You get an old fender bender, the value goes down. You get it. So by no means should you be extending yourself to get into a car really ever in life, like ever at all. The fact that this is the average and that some people in this bracket in the range of 300 to 500 are paying more is really, really, really alarming, guys. It is not good. And you're probably saying, well, they have bad credit, so the interest rate's going to be higher. Yes, it will be higher, but this means that you should buy a cheaper car or save up more money up front. I can tell you, even right out of college, when I bought my first car, I bought a used car. It was a Honda Civic, right? And my payments were in the 200 or something bucks. I didn't have that much money. I was making $55,000 a year. Used little Honda Civic L, whatever it was, a couple $100 a year. So this table really is, if there's one bullet point for this video, or one point I want to get across, is do not be represented here in this data table here, right, guys? If your credit is 661 to 780 even, and you're paying $600 a month, that's bad. This is bad for everybody here, right? Basically what this just says is that people spend way too much monthly on cars in general, which really is problematic on its own. So the next section is just talking about how car prices went up 11%, which is basically the average increase in total vehicle prices. But if we look at the actual average auto loan amount, it's $40,000. That means in general, people are borrowing $40,000 to just have a car and drive around. Reading it directly, average auto loan amounts have steadily increased in the past decade, reaching $39,721 for new vehicles and $27,291 for used vehicles. The used vehicle number isn't surprising. For new vehicles, it certainly is pretty high. But new car buyers in the non-prime range, right, fair credit tier, 601 to 660. So buyers in the credit range of 601 to 660 have the largest loans. $41,000, $843, guys. This is why poverty becomes a cycle, becomes a trap. It's something that's really easy to fall prey to, especially when you come up on a little bit of money, you get a steady job, right? And because of the salespeople, right? So there's a lot of factors working against you, either culturally, right? If you're surrounded by people who go and get a nice car, even though they have a bad job, they'll go and get out a huge loan, they'll work overtime in order to make their $600 a month payment, barely making their car payment and rent, and they'll do that forever, but then suddenly their life blows up in one emergency because they're strapped for cash, right? Cash flow is king. You always want to protect your cash flow, guys. It's much better to have positive cash flow and X, whatever that thing is, than to be at zero cash flow. You never want to be at zero cash flow, guys. It's not good. It's impossible to save when you're at zero cash flow. It's impossible to really start any type of snowball forward when you don't have positive cash flow. So always try to come up with a way with positive cash flow, and that's in all situations. An example of this, I had somebody recently ask me, like, hey, should I take all my cash, or even just cash on hand? Cash is always king. Should I take all this money that I have to pay off debt, but then I'll basically have $0 cash? I basically said no. You always want to keep cash, because what will happen is if you have no cash, you immediately will go into debt, but it becomes a negative snowball, right? When you don't have anything balancing out the equation on the other side, it will start to snowball on the other side against you, right? So if I have zero cash and then I have to suddenly incur $5,000 of credit card debt, that's not good. I'd rather have $5,000 of credit card debt that I'm paying down and $5,000 of cash that I just don't touch. I let it sit there as I pay down that debt. Maybe I'll throw $1,000 at it, but I always want to have cash on hand so that I can not basically let my debt snowball out of control into where I'm in a situation where I have zero positive cash flow or cash on hand. In any case, these loan amounts are astronomical. Do not fall prey to this. But let's actually talk about the bubble. This is all just numbers on average borrowing rate, stuff like that. But why is this a bubble? Why is it bad, right? Well, there's banks like Wells Fargo in particular, who is a primary lender on subprime auto loans. And what will happen is the used car market was appreciating out of control, right? Inflation happens, supply shortage, values went up. I was just talking about this. You have a ton of people who are subprime borrowers, right? Borrowing a ton of money. We just looked at the numbers for recent years. We see that the people with the least amount of paying power are paying the most or borrowing the most. And we know that used car prices are starting to cool off, right? So the supply shortage is getting fixed, used car prices are coming down, and we're in a recession, right? So employment could increase. But even without unemployment changing, the fact that so many people are taking out huge loans and the market is coming down means that even though you took a loan out on a depreciating asset, now the market is working against you. Because before, some of these people actually may have even been all right. You may have seemed like a genius. You bought a truck, you got this $40,000 loan on this huge truck, and then used car market was crazy, and somehow you didn't lose any money on that truck. Well, now the market's going back to normal, it's course correcting, and now you're going to be super underwater on this loan. So you're going to own $40,000 on a truck that's only worth $26,000, and there's no way to get out of that debt. That's the scariest part about auto loan debt, is you can only roll it, right? So you can sell that truck, roll into another truck, you take out a bigger loan, right? And this becomes a really bad negative snowball, all right? Or what happens if your truck you get an accident in this truck, or something like that, you have a major repair, right? You already have all this debt, you're putting money into something that is worth less than the amount that you owe on it, right? It's not like a house where you have this big ball of debt you're paying down forever, but at least you're building equity, right? At least the value is higher. If you had to sell their house, right? You know, and most times, and today is a bad example because people are going to be underwater on their mortgages now too. That's a whole other video. You basically are just, you know, effed, for lack of a better word. And that's the bubble. That's the bubble that's popping. You know, we basically have, during the pandemic, a huge surge in people splurging on these things. You know, Wells Fargo taking advantage of, you know, people who think of, I'm just going to get what I can get for $300 a month. And with the market cooling off, all those people are going to be underwater. They're going to default on their loans. Wells Fargo is kind of just, yeah, eat the bill on that, right? So I would expect for that to ripple through the markets in some way. I don't exactly know how, right? But that money has to go somewhere, right? The effects of large defaults on loans from consumers in general will be felt somewhere. We don't exactly know how. I don't exactly know how, but I do expect for it to blow up in a grand way. And at a minimum, I do expect inventory in the used car market to skyrocket as people try to figure out a way to get out from under these loans, right? Even though they're still going to be underwater, they might take out a personal loan, mezzanine debt, sell the car, get something cheaper, just to try to get it down. And so you're going to have a ton of people selling their used cars, trying to get out from under this debt or lower their debt. It's going to flood the market. Prices are going to go down. It's going to exacerbate the problems. You're going to have more people selling their cars, trying to get out from under the debt. It's going to flood the market, right? It's the same thing that happens. And this is why it's a bubble, right? The bubble pops because everyone takes the same action, right? Just like the other side, what we had now, where everybody was buying because prices were getting higher and people didn't want to miss out, or people didn't want them to get even higher. So people started buying so that prices wouldn't get even higher, and then people started buying, and so prices go higher, right? This is the flip side of that. It pops. So people are selling before the prices get lower, and so more people sell because they see the prices getting lower, which causes the price to get lower, and so more people sell because they see the prices getting lower, which causes the price to get lower, right? It's two sides of the same coin, guys. But you should expect that in anytime you see the value of an asset that does not have sustained steady growth, you should always be alarmed. Nothing, unless there's some novel new utility or value in it, right? Anytime you see runaway value increase, if the value of something triples or 5x's, right? That's cool, right? If your timing is perfect, if you got in early and you sell and you make your money, that's fine. But you should never expect for that to be the normal behavior. Things that grow in an insane way will always blow up in an insane way. Every time, guys. Every time. If there's an exception you're thinking of, don't even worry about commenting on it because it's besides the point and it's pointless. You will absolutely get if you make the mistake of thinking that, you know, runaway appreciation is the norm in whatever asset class you're in. It's not. There's some mechanic, some systemic mechanic that is affecting the market or the value of that asset or that thing, which is causing it to have a runaway price increase or appreciation, which means there's going to be a strong reaction or pullback to find its true market value. But in any case, that is it for this video. Just want to talk a little bit about this. Still simpler of a setup, single camera this time. But yeah, again, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share it to your friends. I appreciate you. See you in the next one.